Hello. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. I want to wish all of my friends from the United States a happy July 4th. I hope you had an amazing time. And then to all my Canadian friends for Canada Day, I hope you all had an amazing long weekend. Had a nice relaxation, didn't trade on Monday and Tuesday, and we're back at it this morning. So I hope you all had an amazing long weekend. And yeah, today I have a short one for you guys, but I just wanted to go over a trade that I took. It wasn't a crazy big trade or anything like that, but it did hit 7 points in profit, and we are trading on the London session liquidity run. So, cheers. I have water today. Gotta stay hydrated. Alright, let's just jump right into it, and I'll show you my trade that I took this morning for New York AM session. So, yes. Okay. So, of course, I start on the daily chart. We'll just kind of go off of what I've seen, what we're possibly looking for. So, all last week we had this nice bullish run right off of this weekly fair value gap right here. This is actually a weekly fair value gap and a daily fair value gap. And I kind of suspect that we want to trade into this weekly volume imbalance right here. We did sort of take out this high last week, but they're sort of relative equal highs in a sense that we want to push a little bit higher into this weekly volume imbalance right here. I'll just jump over to a weekly chart right now, show you. So I have this weekly volume imbalance marked up here. And then I have the levels, 25%, consequent encroachment, 75%, and then the top of the weekly volume imbalance. So, if we continue to move higher, I'm looking for the weekly volume imbalance to be traded to. So then, of course, I go down to the daily. I noticed we had a short-term run into this daily fair value gap here, never making it to the 50% level, which would have been this old new week opening gap. And the fact that we didn't make it down to the 50% level kind of gave us an indication that we might see higher pricing. So, go back into a 1 hour now. Now, this is where it kind of gets cool. So, we noticed that I had this 1 hour fair value gap marked up from yesterday and 2 days ago. I know it was like a holiday kind of long weekend, so the market closed early on Monday and early yesterday. So I didn't trade, but I was on my charts kind of like seeing these levels. I had this 1 hour fair value gap, the new week opening gap, this short-term opening range, and since we technically didn't have, like we didn't open yesterday, we have a very large opening range gap. And we still have this old opening range gap that we only traded down to a little bit here. So that could be something to look for when we are selling, just saying. But yeah, we had this 1 hour fair value gap. Look at how we traded to perfectly filled it in. What is the high of this candle? High is 4466.25. What is the low of this candle? 4466.25. That is a perfect fill on the 1 hour fair value gap. But what's even more interesting is if we drop down to the 15-minute chart. If you guys need some studying to do, I would highly recommend, ICT has a video out on his YouTube called One Trade Setup for Life, and he talks about the areas of liquidity that we are looking for and potentially reaching for. One of them being the London session liquidity raid. So the London session liquidity raid is from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you look on our charts here, right here is 2 a.m. all the way down to 5 a.m., which would be right here. So technically, yes, we did have a lower go, but I think what was happening was we wanted to see the 1 hour fair value gap filled in. And when it didn't fill it in, that's when we knew that this low right here, 5:30, which is kind of close to the 5 a.m. range, right? And then this high, why did I use this high compared to the 2 a.m. high? Well, this one's at 1:30, right? So I'm like, you know what? They're like relative equal highs here. If it's gonna do the London session liquidity rate, it's probably gonna reach for these relative equal highs here, right? So that's kind of why I decided to use this high instead of this high for the London session liquidity rate. But that's where we're targeting. The fact that we stopped here at 5:30 a.m., came up into this 1 hour or 15-minute fair value gap a little, came back down, took this London session liquidity rate while filling in the 1 hour fair value gap, all before market open, coming back up, making a displacement run at 9:30 a.m., filling in this opening range gap. I kind of assumed that we would be wanting to go higher into this new week opening gap, and of course filling in the opening range gap, London session liquidity rate, and potentially the relative equal highs on the higher time frame. Drop down to 5 minutes. Now I only trade between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then of course 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when it is the afternoon session. So I just wanted to see what we had done previously in the day before I decided my bias. And the fact that we had this London session liquidity raid after London session closed, came down, filled in the 1 hour fair value gap, filled that in, and then we had this nice run into the new week opening range gap, which is amazing, comes back down, and then trades higher into the highs of the London session. So the London session liquidity raid for buy side. So, okay, now I'm thinking, all right, I have my bias. Now remember, the markets wouldn't have shown this. It would have looked like this. So I would have seen that we were in the new week opening range gap. I would have noticed we still have opening range gap to fill, and London session liquidity highs were not taken out yet. That is my first key objective, is the London session liquidity highs. Okay, let's drop down to 1 minute. Now that I already have my bias, I'm looking for a fair value gap. So the ICT silver bullet, you do not need to have a fair value gap within the ICT silver bullet time frame. It can be outside that time frame. So I actually used this 1 minute fair value gap right here, and in confluence with the new week opening gap low. So as you can see, we filled this in perfectly, must I add. Look at how beautiful that is. So we have the fair value gap right here, and then we come back down and fill this. This is at 10:01 a.m. This could be your ICT silver bullet trade setup right there. Right? So we come back down, trade into this, reach a little bit higher, taking out this high right here. We still have the London session liquidity highs intact and the opening range gap intact. So we do a 5-point stop loss, and then of course we're aiming for these relative equal highs, so that gives us more than a 10-point stop run. Now of course it did take a little time, and we did come out, take out this low, taking out that sell side liquidity. At the same time though, NAS was driving higher, so that was nice to see. So we came back down, took out sell side liquidity, didn't take out our stop before we actually traded off. Never look at the candles, never closing below the new week opening range gap low. Then our candles started to take off, a little bit more consolidation, took off, hit our London session liquidity area, and then of course traded back down. And this is all before 11 a.m. We came back down to the new week opening gap high, a little bit higher, and we kind of consolidated. And then of course we're entering into lunch at 12. So For me personally, I would have closed out this trade because we are in lunch now, so we're probably going to look for lunch liquidity runs, which could be into new lows. And we kind of see it kind of consolidate around. And then of course we had news at 2 p.m. We had FOMC news. So we see the market drop down, take out this low, and then of course my stop loss would have been hit. This is why I closed my trades before lunch. And then yeah, we're kind of just seeing this happen. I never traded the afternoon session. I just wanted to show you guys something cool and a new area of liquidity to reach for, which is London session liquidity. So even though our final take profit never hit, and we're still going for this weekly volume imbalance low and it never hit, we still made money. Why? Because our first objective was this London session liquidity run, which is 6.25 points in profit, which if you're following the 5-point take profit method, you're already in the money. So yeah, this is kind of my trade for the day. Again, it's a little slower, but the fact that I had the early morning tell me, okay, we took out London session liquidity lows, filled in the 1 hour fair value gap to a T, and then traded higher, never reaching our objective of the London session highs, never reaching our objective of the opening range gap or the relative equal highs. I decided to still go in for a buy. So with that in mind, we dropped down to the lower time frames, looking for our multiplier, which is the fair value gap. Okay, we saw this fair value gap in confluence with the new week opening range gap low, and also in the 4-minute time frame, we can see that there is this wick right here that I saw I was pretty interested in, especially when the markets were going back down into my drawdown. We can see that it never came to 50% of the 4-minute wick, which is also a good sign that we're potentially going higher. And then my last line of defense PD array, if that wick would have been traded into more, would have been this 5-minute fair value gap right here. But we never actually reached down there before taking off into our objective of the London session liquidity highs. We also had this 5-minute fair value gap form as well, but as you can see, that trade right there would have been a nice additional add-on, but to our profit it would have only been 3.5 points. So sure, it could have added on to it, yes, if it was going higher, but the fact that the market just opened, the fact that we had FOMC at 2, news at 2, I wasn't expecting a big run. So you just kind of get what you get and be grateful for it. So yeah, my small 5-point run of the day, but I learned a lot, and I hope you all learned something from this video, and I'd highly recommend watching the One Trade Setup for Life video on ICT's YouTube channel, because he does talk about areas of liquidity, times that those areas of liquidity would be reached, and yeah, it's just really good information. So anyways, I hope you all had an amazing long weekend, and don't forget that this week we have NFP, so be careful for that. And yeah, I hope you learned something. All right, that is all for me today. I will see you all next week, and I hope you like this video. Okay, bye now.